They say the desert is silent, but that silence is deceiving. Beneath the endless dunes and scorched stones, there are whispers, fragments of truths buried not just by time, but by intent. For centuries, we've been told that ancient Egypt has been decoded, its history cataloged, its mysteries laid to rest like the pharaohs in their tombs. But what if that narrative is more illusion than fact? What if the sands still conceal not just forgotten relics, but forbidden knowledge? Mainstream Egyptology paints a picture of predictable grandeur, pyramids as tombs, pharaohs as god-kings, hieroglyphs as religious poetry. But the deeper we dig, the more the picture fractures. There are structures that defy engineering logic, texts that hint at civilizations far older than dynastic Egypt, artifacts that don't belong. And every time one of these anomalies surfaces, something strange happens. Silence. Excavations halted, reports unpublished, entire discoveries quietly erased. This isn't about fringe theories or wild speculation. This is about the consistent pattern of omission, the kinds of questions reputable scholars learn not to ask, the kinds of evidence that vanish into museum basements. The desert does not forget, but it can be made to shut up. Why would anyone want to bury the truth twice, once by the passage of time, and again deliberately by human hands? The reasons are as complex as the mysteries themselves. Some secrets undermine power, others challenge the very timeline of human civilization. And a few, the rarest, might alter our understanding of consciousness, life, and what came before. As the sun rises over Giza, casting long shadows across the sand, we begin our journey. Not to find easy answers, but to confront what has long been hidden. This is not a story of ancient kings. It is a story of the questions they left behind, and the truths someone didn't want us to find. Behind every official timeline, every neatly categorized artifact stands a quiet but powerful force, the gatekeepers of history. Academics, institutions, museum curators, textbook authors, all sworn to uphold what is deemed acceptable truth. On the surface, their role is preservation. But look closer, and it begins to feel more like control. When new discoveries surface that don't fit the established narrative, when evidence threatens to rewrite what we've all been taught, it's not celebrated. It's challenged, dismissed, or simply ignored. The more disruptive the find, the faster the silence, and often the more violent the pushback against those who dare to question. This isn't a matter of ignorance, it's fear. Fear that history is far more mysterious, chaotic, and interconnected than we've been led to believe. Fear that ancient Egypt wasn't just a cradle of civilization, but a remnant of something even older. So we must ask, what truths have these gatekeepers buried? And what are they so afraid the world might discover? According to mainstream history, ancient Egypt's timeline is carved in stone, a neatly ordered sequence of dynasties stretching back to around 3100 BCE. But the deeper you look, the more that timeline begins to crack, like a facade held together by tradition more than truth. Take the Great Sphinx. For decades, it was comfortably placed in Egypt's Old Kingdom, dated to the reign of Pharaoh Khafra around 2500 BCE. But in the 1990s, geological analysis shook that assumption. Experts like Dr. Robert Schoch pointed to deep vertical erosion on the Sphinx's body. Erosion consistent not with wind and sand, but with heavy rainfall. The kind Egypt hasn't seen since at least 7000 BCE. That's thousands of years before the pharaohs even appeared. Then there's carbon dating, a method science typically trusts. Yet organic materials found near the Great Pyramid and other structures have returned conflicting results, often dating back centuries earlier than official estimates. These are not isolated anomalies, they are part of a pattern. And what of the king lists, the records passed down by Egyptian priests and scribes? Some of them, like the Turin Papyrus and the writings of Manetho, describe reigns of the gods lasting tens of thousands of years before any human dynasty. Are we to dismiss these as mere mythology? Or might they hint at a legacy even the Egyptians themselves inherited? The conventional timeline doesn't just ignore these clues, it resists them. Because if Egypt is older than we believe, then so is human civilization. And with that possibility comes a question far more unsettling than erosion or carbon dates. What was really happening on Earth before history officially began? For centuries, the Great Sphinx has been Egypt's eternal guardian, a half-lion, half-man monument watching over the Giza plateau. But beneath its stoic gaze lies a riddle far deeper than the one it's famed for. According to official history, it was carved during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, around 2500 BCE. Yet even this attribution is based more on proximity than proof. No inscriptions, no records, no definitive link. Enter John Anthony West and Dr. Robert Schoch. In the early 1990s, they dared to look not at the statue itself, but at the stone surrounding it. What they found defied explanation. The Sphinx enclosure showed deep, undulating patterns of erosion, not from sand, but from water. Torrential, sustained rainfall, the kind that hasn't fallen on the Giza plateau since at least 7000 BCE. This single observation shattered everything. If the Sphinx was exposed to rain thousands of years before Khafre's time, then who built it? The tools needed to carve limestone on that scale didn't exist, at least not in any known culture of that era. And yet the monument stands. Could it be that the Sphinx predates Egypt itself? That it was the legacy of a civilization now lost to time and myth? One with knowledge, resources, and a vision we can barely comprehend? If so, then Egypt didn't start the story of civilization, it inherited it. And the Sphinx isn't just a monument. It's a warning that history as we know it may be built on forgotten foundations. Beneath the sands of Saqqara, hidden away from the towering pyramids and well-trodden tourist paths, lies a chambered labyrinth known as the Serapeum, Zrania, a place few have seen, and even fewer understand. Inside this subterranean complex are massive granite sarcophagi, each weighing up to 100 tons, perfectly carved and placed in chambers barely large enough to contain them. The question isn't just what they held, but how they got there at all. Conventional archaeology tells us these boxes were meant for the sacred Apis bulls, revered in ancient Egyptian religion. But reverence doesn't explain the absurd precision of the craftsmanship, or the logistical impossibility of moving these multi-ton boxes through narrow underground corridors. There are no ramps, no inscriptions detailing their creation, and the tools supposedly available at the time, copper chisels and stone hammers, would have been laughably inadequate for shaping the hardest granite known to man. Some of the interiors are polished to a mirror finish with tolerance levels rivaling modern machining. Who possessed this kind of skill, and more importantly, why? Was the Serapeum really built by dynastic Egyptians, or was it repurposed by them long after its true builders vanished? The silence of these granite giants raises unnerving questions. They are too advanced for their context, too mysterious for their supposed purpose, and too precise for the primitive tools of their era. Whatever their original function, it seems the Serapeum was never meant for cattle. It was meant to endure, untouched, unspoken, and hidden in plain sight. And it challenges everything we think we know about Egypt's past. And who else might have once walked its sacred ground? Beneath Saqqara's crumbling surface, whispers speak of chambers that no one is allowed to enter. Sealed doorways, untouched shafts, and corridors that abruptly end at walls too smooth, too deliberate. Archaeologists acknowledge some of these anomalies, but the official story is always the same. Nothing of interest lies beyond. Yet maps leaked from early surveys show voids that were never followed up. Ground-penetrating radar has detected empty spaces where there should be solid rock. And in more than one case, permits to excavate deeper have been mysteriously denied. Why? The deeper question isn't what lies beneath Saqqara. It's why we're not allowed to find out. Who decides what parts of history get unearthed? Who seals off potential discoveries before the world ever hears of them? These forbidden chambers fuel more than speculation. They invite a dangerous idea that some truths are too inconvenient to explore, and that beneath Saqqara the past isn't just buried, it's being carefully protected from the present. In the ruins of Abu Rawash, just north of Giza, lies a site that barely makes it into tourist brochures, and yet it may hold the most damning evidence against conventional history. Scattered across the plateau are fragments of stone cut with such extraordinary precision that they resemble modern machine work. Perfectly circular drill holes carved into granite, symmetrical channels grooved with mathematical accuracy, and slab faces polished to a glass-like sheen. These aren't anomalies, they're patterns. Mainstream Egyptology insists these cuts were made with simple copper tools and hours of manual labor. But copper is softer than granite. It doesn't slice through it, it bends against it. The kinds of cuts found at Abu Rawash, Giza, and even deep within temple foundations require tools with a hardness and accuracy our ancestors supposedly didn't possess. High-speed rotary drills, ultrasonic carving methods, or even unknown techniques, the evidence defies simple answers. Some of the granite cores extracted from these drill holes show spiral striations consistent with mechanical speed and pressure. Engineers who've examined them admit, if we didn't know better, we'd assume these were cut with modern equipment. And yet, they're over 4,000 years old or older. We've long admired ancient Egypt for its artistic beauty, but perhaps we've overlooked its engineering genius. Or perhaps we've confused inheritance for invention. What if the Egyptians didn't develop this technology but inherited it from a culture far older, one lost to time, cataclysm, or conscious erasure? If so, then Egypt's marvels aren't just architectural wonders, they're technological relics. Reminders that humanity's past might be far more advanced and far more mysterious than we dare admit. The pharaohs weren't just rulers draped in gold and myth. Many were engineers, architects, and master planners. From Sneferu to Amenhotep III, their legacies weren't just carved in legend but in stone, blueprints of power etched into the earth. But where did their knowledge come from? Take Sneferu, builder of 3 pyramids, including the elusive bent pyramid, a structure whose bizarre angle shift remains unexplained. Was it a construction error, or the correction of ancient plans no one fully understood? Later pharaohs like Ramses II oversaw vast temple complexes with symmetrical perfection and impossible alignment to stars. Were they mastering new knowledge or preserving fragments of something much older? Some texts speak of sacred blueprints, divine measurements passed down from the gods. The term sounds mythical until you see the consistency of design, the repetition of geometry, the echo of forgotten principles. These kings weren't just building monuments, they were following instructions from a time before their own. And if they were merely the stewards, not the originators of that knowledge, then the question isn't how Egypt rose so high, but how much higher a civilization before it might have reached. Among the dusty temples and crumbling walls of ancient Egypt lie clues that don't belong, objects and carvings so strange they challenge not only the timeline of history, but its very structure. In the temple of Seti at Abydos, nestled among traditional hieroglyphs, are engravings that resemble modern aircraft, a helicopter, a tank-like vehicle, even what looks like a futuristic drone. Egyptologists dismiss them as palimpsests, accidental overlaps of recarved glyphs. but the shapes are too clean, too specific. Is it coincidence or something else? Elsewhere, artifacts made from unknown alloys have been unearthed, metals resistant to corrosion with no clear origin or known production method. Some are dismissed as ritual tools or symbolic objects, but they bear properties far beyond ceremonial use. Then there are the statues, elongated skulls, disproportionately large eyes, beings neither fully human nor entirely animal. Are these mythological figures, artistic interpretations, or crude attempts to replicate what was once real? The mainstream narrative assures us these are misreadings, that symbolism, erosion, or creative imagination explains it all. But interpretation often bends to expectation, and when an object defies categorization, it is not re-evaluated, it is explained away. Are these artifacts the work of an ancient people glimpsing a forgotten truth? Could they be memories passed down, distorted through centuries of storytelling? Or do they hint at encounters, knowledge, or technologies that didn't originate on this earth at all? The line between metaphor and memory is thinner than we think, and when confronted with the truly unexplainable, perhaps the greater danger is not believing too much but dismissing too quickly what might be staring us in the face. For every artifact proudly displayed behind glass, countless more sit in quiet storage, undocumented, unpublished, unseen. Deep within museum basements and research vaults, entire collections remain off-limits to the public eye, not because they lack value, but because they don't fit. When an object threatens to rewrite history, the safest option is to make it disappear, not destroyed but shelved. Labeled unknown, unclassified, or worse, irrelevant. Museums are trusted as keepers of truth, but they're also curators of narrative. And a curated story requires boundaries. What's not shown matters as much as what is. Because somewhere in those locked drawers and forgotten crates may lie the evidence we were never meant to see. For a civilization obsessed with death and the afterlife, ancient Egypt left a troubling trail of absences. Among the pharaohs and high priests who commanded vast temples and armies, there are names whose final resting places remain curiously missing. Not destroyed, not defiled, simply never found. Take Imhotep, not just a vizier but a godlike figure in Egyptian history. The architect of the first pyramid, a polymath, a healer, revered for millennia. And yet his tomb, promised to be a wonder of the ancient world, remains undiscovered. Then there's Akhenaten, the heretic king who defied centuries of religious order and declared the sun as the one true god. His original burial site is unknown. Was it lost or deliberately erased? And Cleopatra, the last true pharaoh whose love and death with Mark Antony became legend. Historians search, but her tomb has never been located. One of history's most famous women vanished without a trace. These aren't obscure names, they were central figures, rulers whose deaths should have left monumental legacies. Yet the silence of their graves raises a deeper question. Were they hidden? Or was there something about their lives or their knowledge that the sands were meant to swallow forever? Some tombs may not be missing, they may be intentionally concealed. For centuries, Egypt's elite guarded their secrets with more than stone walls. They designed their burials to be undetectable, inaccessible, even invisible. Why? Because in those chambers, it wasn't just bodies they were protecting, it was knowledge. Theories abound that certain tombs were sealed not merely for preservation, but for containment. Protected from looters, yes, but also from historians, from outsiders, from those not meant to see. Ancient texts speak of sacred knowledge passed only through bloodlines or hidden beneath the watchers of stone. What if some tombs were never meant to be found at all? Some researchers believe entire subterranean networks exist beneath Egypt's desert, a buried labyrinth of vaults, corridors, and chambers untouched by modern excavation. Satellite imaging and ground-penetrating radar have hinted at massive voids beneath known sites, but few are ever explored. Permits are denied. Digging is halted. Why? Perhaps these tombs predate dynastic Egypt altogether. Perhaps they belong to a forgotten people whose legacy would upend the current timeline. Or perhaps what they hold is not just evidence of a deeper past, but a truth humanity isn't ready to face. What lies beneath the surface may not just rewrite history, it may redefine it. And until we choose to confront what has been deliberately buried, we may never understand why those tombs were hidden in the first place. In a civilization built on tradition, Akhenaten was a rupture. He didn't just defy the gods, he replaced them. For over 1,000 years, Egypt had worshipped a complex pantheon with elaborate rituals, temples, and priesthoods. Then Akhenaten appeared and shattered it all. He declared that there was only one god, Aten, the sun disk, and he was its sole messenger. The temples of Amun were closed, statues destroyed, names chiseled off walls. Entire cities were abandoned as Akhenaten built a new capital, Akhetaten, devoted entirely to his singular vision. To Orthodox historians, it was a religious experiment, a political move to weaken the priesthood. But was it something more? Was Akhenaten reviving a lost truth, a monotheistic memory buried beneath centuries of myth? Some texts hint that his teachings weren't new, they were rediscovered. Echoes of a forgotten era when knowledge flowed from the heavens and truth was unified, not fractured. The sudden shift wasn't just rebellion, it was remembrance. But remembrance comes at a cost. After Akhenaten's death, his name was erased from monuments, his city left to decay, his legacy branded heresy. Egypt tried to forget him, but the echoes remain in stone, in story, and perhaps in something much deeper. Akhenaten wasn't just a heretic in belief, he was an anomaly in flesh. Carvings and statues show a figure unlike any other pharaoh. Elongated skull, narrow face, wide hips, spindly limbs, and a strangely feminine posture. To some, it was an artistic expression, symbolic of the union between male and female divine energy. But others saw something more unsettling. Was this the result of a genetic disorder, Marfan syndrome, or Froelic's? Medical theories abound, but none fully explain the consistency of his portrayal across temples, statues, and stelae. And if it was merely symbolic, why did his family, including his son Tutankhamun, show similar traits? Tutankhamun's own body held secrets, a partially cleft palate, a club foot, and signs of genetic disease. DNA studies suggest years of inbreeding, but the anomalies hint at something deeper, a bloodline intentionally preserved, perhaps for what it carried. Then there's the question no one dares ask. What if Akhenaten's appearance wasn't human error or stylized symbolism, but memory? A preserved echo of a form seen long ago, one revered, feared, or worshipped. The elongated skulls resemble those found in other ancient cultures, Peru, Mesopotamia, even Siberia. Coincidence, or a trace of something non-human? Akhenaten's legacy wasn't just erased, it was buried under layers of denial. His god, his body, his beliefs, all too strange to explain, too dangerous to explore. Yet he remains the most enigmatic figure in Egypt's history. Neither fully king nor fully understood. And if his image survives, distorted though it may be, it's because somewhere within it lies a truth ancient Egypt tried and failed to forget. For centuries, whispers have surrounded the Great Sphinx, not just about its age or origin, but about what lies beneath. According to legend, deep beneath its massive paws rests a hidden chamber, a hall of records. A vault of ancient knowledge, history, science, even spiritual truths, left behind by a forgotten civilization to be rediscovered in a future age. American mystic Edgar Cayce famously predicted in the early 20th century that such a hall existed, and that it would be discovered near the Sphinx around the end of the 20th century. Most dismissed it as fantasy until science caught up. In the 1990s, ground-penetrating radar scans around the Sphinx revealed the impossible: unexplained voids and rectangular anomalies beneath its surface. One such chamber appeared directly beneath the front paws, exactly where Casey had said it would be. Egyptian authorities acknowledged the findings but quickly downplayed them. No follow-up digs, no formal excavation. The story quietly disappeared from headlines. Yet independent researchers continued to press forward, uncovering ancient texts and local oral traditions that echoed the same myth. A hidden archive buried by the first-time kings of Tepi, waiting to be uncovered when humanity was ready. What if the Hall of Records isn't just a metaphor for human memory? What if it's real and it holds not just the lost history of Egypt, but of civilization itself? The implications would be staggering. Timelines would collapse. Religions would be questioned. The foundations of academia would shake, and so the chamber remains undisturbed. Locked beneath the Sphinx, sealed by stone and silence. Perhaps waiting for a moment that never comes, or perhaps waiting for someone brave enough to open it. Despite mounting interest and advancing technology, one thing remains constant: resistance. Every attempt to excavate beneath the Sphinx is met with bureaucratic roadblocks, academic scorn, or political shutdown. Permits vanish. Research is dismissed, access is denied. Egyptian antiquities authorities insist there's nothing to find, even when their own commissioned surveys say otherwise. When foreign teams offer funding or equipment to explore the voids beneath the monument, they are quietly turned away. Why? Is it pride? A desire to control Egypt's narrative without outside interference? Or is there a deeper concern that what lies beneath could rewrite everything? The power to decide what is excavated, what is studied, and what is shared belongs to a very select few. And they guard that privilege not as scholars, but as gatekeepers. Whether out of fear, politics, or something more, the message is clear. Some secrets are not meant to be unearthed, but the question remains: who gets to decide what we're ready for? We're taught that Egypt was the beginning, the first great civilization rising from the Nile to usher in writing, architecture, astronomy, and divine kingship. But what if Egypt wasn't the origin, but the echo? Throughout Egypt's own mythology, there are references to a forgotten time called Tepi, the first time, when gods walked among men and divine knowledge shaped the land. Modern scholars call it myth. But what if it wasn't? What if Tepi refers to a real lost civilization whose ruins lie buried beneath dynastic achievements, long before the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, before the pyramids or even hieroglyphs? There are signs of intelligence. Intricate megalithic structures, advanced astronomical alignments, and inexplicable craftsmanship suggest the presence of people, or beings, who understood geometry, engineering, and the cosmos with a precision that shouldn't have existed at the time. Some researchers point to a maritime culture, a seafaring civilization that may have navigated the globe before recorded history began. Their influence, they argue, appears not just in Egypt, but in South America, Mesopotamia, and even the Indus Valley. Similar construction techniques, shared symbolism, and recurring architectural patterns hint at a forgotten cultural inheritance spread across continents. Is it coincidence that many ancient cultures reference golden ages followed by catastrophic floods? That Egypt's own king lists speak of reigns of gods lasting tens of thousands of years? Or that sites like Göbekli Tepe, predating Egypt by millennia, show signs of sophistication equal or greater than the pyramids? Perhaps Egypt wasn't the first to rise, but one of the last to remember. A civilization not starting a story but preserving its final chapter, built atop the bones of something much older, much stranger, and deliberately forgotten. The deeper science digs into the DNA of ancient Egyptians, the stranger the picture becomes. Genetic studies on royal mummies, including Tutankhamun, reveal lineages that don't quite align with modern Egyptians nor with any single regional group. Some markers suggest distant European ties, others hint at sub-Saharan, Middle Eastern, even unclassified origins. The further back in time we go, the more complex and less local the story becomes. This isn't just about genes, it's about connections. Across the globe, civilizations separated by oceans and millennia built eerily similar monuments, pyramids aligned to celestial bodies, temples based on sacred geometry, gods that walked among men and brought fire, language, and law. Egypt shares these echoes. Consider the stepped pyramids of Mesoamerica, the precision-cut stones of Peru, the serpent symbolism of India and the Nile. It's as if fragments of a single cultural blueprint scattered across the planet after some ancient disruption. These aren't random parallels. They suggest a forgotten network, not necessarily an empire, but a shared memory. A legacy passed through ruins, myths, bloodlines, and buried bones. Egypt may be the best preserved piece of that puzzle, but it's not the only one. The question now is not whether Egypt stood alone, but who stood beside it long before history was allowed to begin. We marvel at Egypt's monuments, but it's the silence between the stones that speaks loudest. For every hieroglyph etched into temple walls, there are 1,000 questions left unanswered. Voices that once spoke and have long since gone quiet. What we think we know is dwarfed by what remains in shadow. The pyramids still stand, but their purpose is debated. The Sphinx still watches, but its origins remain contested. Chambers stay sealed. Names are missing. Entire lifetimes, entire civilizations perhaps are unaccounted for. And yet, we walk past these mysteries as if they are solved, content to file the unknown into neatly labeled folders. Myth, coincidence, artistic license. But Egypt doesn't give easy answers, it never has. Its brilliance lies not just in what was built, but in what was preserved, the careful concealment of something bigger, deeper, older. It invites curiosity but resists conclusion, it offers glimpses, never certainty. And maybe that's the point. Maybe these relics weren't meant to tell us everything, but to remind us how little we truly know. How much has been lost, not just to erosion and looters, but to arrogance. The assumption that we've reached the peak of understanding. Because the past doesn't whisper in clear words. It speaks in riddles, symbols, shadows. And in that silence, we find not answers, but awe. What if Egypt's greatest secrets weren't simply lost to time, but hidden deliberately? Buried once beneath sand and centuries, and buried again beneath institutions, politics, and fear. We've seen it. Doors left unopened, artifacts left unclassified, chambers scanned but never explored. There's a pattern, and it's not just caution, it's control. The deeper the mystery, the more tightly it's held. As if revealing the truth would unravel something too vast, too destabilizing to confront. But why? What could be so threatening beneath stone and silence? Maybe it's because Egypt holds more than history. Maybe it holds memories of an origin story far older than textbooks admit, of a knowledge that challenges not just science, but the story of who we are. And if that truth were exposed tomorrow, would we be ready for it? Or would we turn away, afraid of what it might mean? Perhaps the ancients didn't just build to last. Perhaps they built to be found at the right time by the right minds willing to listen. So we end not with answers, but with a challenge. The secrets are still whispering. Will we dare to hear them?